Alright, so here we are in front of the elephants.
It was a pretty sunset.
Come on, Barbie.
Oh, let's go party. That's right, shit.
Yeah, they say that in the movie.
Yes.
That's an actual exchange of dialogue, both between Ezra Miller.
See, I forgot about that. So my delivery of "oh shit, let's go party" is much like his surprise delivery of "let's go party" in the movie.
Let's go party. In Who Are We? Who of us is Flash? Who of us is Supergirl? Who of us is Batman?
I'll say which one is young Flash, which one's current problematic.
No, there's
Flash.
there's only three of us. So current, like a Barry Prime, Supergirl, Keaton, Batman. Who is who?
I feel like you're Keaton, Steve. I don't know. I guess Dan has Barry like energy, but like physical Barry energy.
See, I think I'm Kara. I think I'm Supergirl.
You think you're
I
Kara
feel like
Zor-El?
I think I'm Kara Zor-El.
I thought I would be Batman and you'd be Supergirl and you'd be Flash, Connor.
Yeah, I just want to be Ezra Miller, no matter how you slice it.
You're not Ezra Miller. You're Barry
I'm the
Allen in this
Flash.
situation.
I'm Barry Allen, another great cool dude.
Doesn't Grant Gustin in that TV show have a monologue that starts every episode? I'm Barry Allen. I'm the fastest. man
Yes,
alive,
I'm Barry
or
Allen, the
whatever.
fastest man alive. Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie was announced in the year 2014, a week before the Flash TV show began running. That show ended before this movie came out.
Is it? I was about to ask. Is it finally off the air?
I believe so. If not, it's very close. So this show, the Flash TV show, ran for 9 seasons before this movie came out.
Okay.
Pretty good run, though.
Yeah, he did have a very good run because he's the Flash. He's the fastest man alive.
Howdy, and welcome to Film Asterisk, the YouTube exclusive series that was once formerly Film and the Champlain Wave radio show.
Yes.
I am joined by Connor and Steve, and today we will be discussing not only the recent release of 2023's The Flash, but also we will be doing a bit of a retrospective, this week, a decade ago, with 2013's Man of Steel, which, if most know listening, was the film that kicked off the DCEU, the cinematic universe that we have seen. Started off with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, and we are exactly 1 decade in to this cinematic experiment of sorts of comic book superhero movies. It's interesting.
You just raise an interesting question. First, a little bit of context. First, Connor, former co-host of this show, former primary host, and then me. You may know me from things such as Hulkback Mountain, BP 75, presenting Best Supporting Actress at 1 year of the Andes, the Western
Andes.
Bracket.
Oh, the Western Bracket.
Western
Love
Bracket,
that
which I
one.
think was my last appearance. Anyway, second
Halloween episode. Twins of Evil.
Halloween episode.
There it is.
Twins of Evil. But that's a great question. Now I'm trying to think, in 10 years, how many movies have been released? We have Man of Steel, BVS.
Well, I actually know this
Suicide
for a
Squad.
fact.
Okay.
It's 14.
He has it ready to go. 14.
Flash is the 14th.
Over the course of a decade.
If you include Zack Snyder's Justice League, technically that's kind of like an Elseworlds kind of deal, but that's 14.
Let's say
including that.
13.5.
Okay.
A
We've gotten-
perfectly cursed number for this.
Yeah.
A baker's dozen and a half.
Yeah.
of
I actually
DC
did something,
movies.
which is how I know that number.
You bought them all?
No, I looked back at all of our Letterboxd, and I tallied the average of each of our opinions for each movie in the DCEU.
Y'all did way more homework for this
Wow,
than I
yeah.
did. Yeah.
What ended up happening with those?
I have not yet rated Wonder Woman, so I abstained from that. And Dan has not seen Black Adam or Shazam 2, so I just abstained him from those.
God, am I the only person who's seen all of these? Or Connor, you've seen all of them.
I've seen all of them. I just haven't logged Wonder Woman on Letterboxd. I don't retroactively log.
Yeah.
But yeah, even with my abstention, Wonder Woman is the highest with 3.75.
Makes sense. Good movie.
And
I feel like a lot of
one
that
of my
is
favorites.
heavily weighed by my score.
Yeah.
So-
you're usually the outlier
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
So I can give you guys the 1 to 10, because there's a lot of ties.
Do it.
Okay.
So 1 is Wonder Woman.
All right.
2 is Aquaman.
Okay, makes sense.
3, our first tie, is Shazam and the Justice League, the James Gunn version.
Oh, the Suicide Squad.
The Suicide Squad. I'm sorry,
Oh.
the Suicide
Yeah,
Squad.
wait.
I don't know why I said the
It's
Justice
a tie
League
with Aquaman.
with Shazam for 3rd
With
place.
Shazam.
Which makes sense. All of these make sense so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not-
4 is Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of
That's-
One Harley Quinn.
And that is you all highly.
A movie that I
affecting
think
that.
is fine, but
I took a star down from that.
Yeah.
You guys just hate these movies.
well,
Yeah,
here's
a little bit.
I
Well,
I
they're
think
all positive attributes.
I think Birds of Prey is fine. I just don't vibe with it.
Yeah.
Which sounds terrible because it's one of those movies that represents a movement or whatever.
Hate is a very strong word. I'm going to go tell you guys the average scores of each of us for this entire franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not too far off. All the scores are low, but you guys aren't too terribly low for me.
But
Yeah.
you just named 6 out of the 14, and I think we're out of what I would consider good movies.
Yes. It's funny you say that, Steve.
Yeah.
Because number 5 is Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Which you and I both like.
Which me and
well
you
enough.
both like. But Steve's
As-
one throws us off a little bit.
It does. Yeah.
Next, tied for 6th place, is Suicide Squad and Black Adam.
A movie that's bad, but I kind of like.
The original Suicide Squad.
The
The original Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
I kind of like it as a trasher piece. And Black Adam sucks dick.
And then this next one's kind of fitting. Because tied for 7th place now is BVS and The Flash.
Interesting.
BVS and the Flash.
Isn't that a Jonathan Demme movie? A joke for no one.
It's a joke for us.
Yeah.
For us. Yeah.
And then 8th place, Shazam, Fury of the Gods.
Haven't seen it. Don't plan to.
Sucks shit.
Yes.
And then, coincidentally enough, 9th place, Man of Steel, and The Whedon
Whoa.
Justice League.
So low.
Here's the thing. I dropped it a half a star on this last watch. I didn't think I would, but then I gave it some thought. I was like, no, that thing, yeah. We'll get into it.
There's one movie we haven't mentioned. Do you guys know what the one thing we haven't mentioned is?
I'm trying to think. Oh. Wonder Woman 1984.
Yes.
Oh,
That is the 10th spot.
That's lower than theatrical Justice League.
Wow.
Yes.
That's here's the thing. Wonder Woman 1984, a horribly incompetent film. That's insulting to Wonder Woman 1984. That its average score is lower than theatrical
Because
Justice
I
League.
have our averages. So Wonder 1984 got a 1.5 from me, a 2 from Dan, Steve, and a 1 from you,
Yes.
making it a 1.5.
Yes.
Justice League, or the Whedon cut as we call it,
Yeah.
had a 1.83. Because me and Dan both gave it a 2.5, and you gave it a 0.5.
Because it's not a movie. It doesn't
Yeah.
function in any way, shape, or form. It didn't get released. It escaped.
Yes.
Okay.
So, who do you guys think mathematically like this franchise the best?
You.
Me.
Or, yeah.
Probably you.
Yeah.
I
So
would
my
say
You go
Steve probably
first.
likes it the least. Right?
Dan, you'd
Barely.
be surprised, or maybe not, because you're right.
Okay.
But my total together of all my scores was 40 divided by 13 because I abstained from Wonder Woman, and I averaged a 3.
Okay.
So overall,
That
good.
sounds about right.
Yeah. Dan, 31, 12, because you didn't do the last two. And that's a 2.58. And then
that sounds about
Steve,
right.
your total was 31.
Uh-huh.
And you had no abstentions. So divided by 14 is a 2.2 for this franchise.
God damn.
Wow.
And there's a couple of these movies I generally really
Wonder
like.
Woman you gave a 4.5. Like you
I think
do
that movie-
very much
I think
like
that movie is near for a big summer blockbuster. I think that movie is nearly perfect.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I like it.
Yeah.
The rewatchability for me has always been surprising. The fact that I can come back to it and just be like, oh, I'm still enjoying this. And I have made sure to just accidentally never watch it often enough where I remember the jokes and the pacing and what makes it so great. But holy crap, thank you for those stats.
Yeah.
I've
I
always
just
been
got that
big
idea
fan
a couple
of
days ago. I was like, I
stats.
should do this.
I kind of just want to start off by saying we are now a decade into the DCEU. All ratings kind of tell the story of how we feel about it, but let's put it into words. What has it been like watching a decade of DCEU? We were all between the ages of 12 and 14 when the first one came out, Man of Steel, and now we all in our 20s watching Flash. What do we think?
About the DCEU as a whole?
Yes.
It used to... I was thinking about this today at work when I was trying to untangle a rat's nest of XLR cables, because this is my life now. And just thinking about my reaction to Man of Steel when it came out. And these movies used to bother me a lot more. Because most of my youth was very angry and sort of misplaced anger. And a lot of my growing up has been learning how to not misplace my anger, and that some things just aren't worth my time. And also just my view of the film world and film culture has changed so much that it's too exhausting to actually care about these things.
Yeah.
These comic book movies in particular. So now I'm wildly indifferent. And when I do like one of these movies, I look the gift horse in the mouth and I take it and I move on.
Yeah, it's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
You know, it's always a bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
Coming into these things, because sadly for me, this extended cinematic universe has been a real mixed bag and a tonal jumble of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels a bit like they're throwing stuff at the wall and they see what sticks. You know, they're like, they went one direction, it didn't work out great. Let's go this direction. Okay, that didn't work out great. And they tend to zig and zag, and you can't blame them for trying to find something that's marketable and trying to find something that appeals to people. But at the same time, the consistency kind of gives a lot of viewers whiplash. But it's better than kind of the mind-numbing stupor that post Endgame MCU has put me in, where like I just know exactly what I'm getting, and sometimes it feels a bit homogenous. But
A bit.
fair point. Connor, a decade in, how's it going for you?
When I saw Man of Steel, very similar feelings we'll talk about here in a little bit. I liked it for the most part, and then the ending happened, and I just felt nothing. Like I was just waiting for it to be over. And I'm trying to pull up my list here of the DCU, so I have it all in front of me. Well, give me a half second here. I don't know my. There we go. Yes, I'm overall, like we just talked about, more positive on this than you guys are. There's a lot of these movies I do generally like. I think Aquaman is probably my favorite of the whole batch. It's the one I go back to the most, and I just pop in all the time just to have fun.
Excuse me, Connor, Aqua, my man.
Aqua, my man, yes.
Aqua, my man.
To the point is when we watched Zack Snyder's The Justice League, even you, Steve, hated that movie. When he said, my man, we all like...
No. The entire time watching it, I'm like, he better fucking say my man in this.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, I don't think does he say my man in Aquaman, or does he only say that in Justice League?
I think it's just Justice League.
Yeah.
But it's one of the in Aquaman.
But it's one of the few good moments in Justice both cuts when he just gets caught by Cyborg and he's like, my man.
Quick question: are we getting a second Aquaman?
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming this year.
No, fuck.
This December.
Cool.
Yeah.
Keep moving.
Early test reviews are not good.
No, they're not.
Shocker.
But yeah, 10 years in, 14 movies down, I like a big chunk of them. I think honestly, actually now it is kind of split 50-50 between like a positive like 3 and the rest. But I look back on the DCU fondly, and I'm excited for the reboot, but also very nervous at the same time.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know. It's been kind of an interesting ride for me because I've always looked at this cinematic universe that DC has been trying to build over the last decade, and they have built it, but at the same time I've always had a difficulty connecting to it and caring about it in the way that when I was younger I connected with characters like Iron Man and Captain America, which when I saw those movies for the first time, they're still some of my favorite movies of my childhood. They really stuck with me, and sadly stuff like Man of Steel and I mean particularly BVS just don't stand my test of time, I guess. But to go back to where it all began, again, I want this to kind of be a retrospective look back at where Man of Steel has been, at least for a little bit, and kind of contextualize that with how we just watched The Flash, which I wasn't expecting this, but a lot of inclusion of the original Man of Steel movie that is going back to the first for a lot of the film's runtime. It exists literally during the events of Man of Steel. But we have all recently rewatched Man of Steel in all its glory. Yeah. What do we think, folks?
Do you want me to just do my monologue about Man of Steel?
Let's do it. Let's send it off.
All right, let's do my monologue about the Man of Steel. So, out of the three of us, I am the one who has read the most comics. Right? That's just a factual statement. Primarily, throughout most of my childhood and adolescence, I was a DC kid. Yeah. I liked the DC universe on the whole more than the Marvel universe. So I know all of these ancillary characters and sort of background, details and things like that. Like, you tell me you're making a Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle movie, there's going to be a little part of me that's very, very excited, even though there's a larger part of me that's very, very skeptical. Though I think that trailer looks all right.
Yeah, it looks all right. Yeah. It looks okay.
I mean, with any of these, there's always the default, well, might be a shit show, but I have a modicum of hope for this one.
Yeah.
And I was a big, big Superman kid. Connor knows this. I love Superman. I consider the original Dawn or Superman one of those life-changing movies for me. One of those real, my dad showed it to me on TV, like a real activator moment for me. And I grew up reading Superman comics, and I am not one of those people who think Superman is boring. I think Superman's great. I think he's an aspirational hero. I think there's a lot of really fascinating aspects to his character, but he's a tough character to write because he's so overpowered and because he's an aspirational hero. It's hard to find where can you fit in a flaw or where can you give him a challenge that's actually difficult for him to overcome that isn't just a punch fest.
Or like kryptonite.
Or kryptonite, yes. So I grew up, and when I'm like 12 years old and they announce that Christopher Nolan is going to write the story for and produce a new Superman movie hot off the heels of the Dark Knight trilogy, I am very excited about that prospect. And then, the day of the Dark Knight Rises release comes out, and one of the big things, it was like this weekend, Man of Steel trailer only in theaters, not going to be online until after this opening weekend. And I go to see The Dark Knight Rises, equally excited for the Man of Steel teaser as I am the actual movie. And I watch that teaser. It's the last trailer to play before the movie starts. And you get all this moody, dramatic imagery of him on a fucking deadliest catch boat and whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you show him, glimpses of him in the suit in, the North Pole where the Fortress of Solitude is. And he goes down, he puts his fist down, and little monicums of snow is rising from the power, and then he lifts off. And I'm like,
you get that classic voiceover from Russell Crowe, correct?
I think so, yeah.
He's saying you will teach them to walk in the sun.
Okay. And then he keeps flying, and then he breaks the sound barrier almost instantly. And in the theater, I said, oh no, they fucked it. Already they fucked it. And all of my excitement just completely deflated. And I'm like,
13.
Yeah. I was like, they've already made him too powerful. This is already focusing on. I'm like, I understand that you need to sell spectacle, but at the same time, like, this is too much too quickly. And then I was skeptical, and then all the other trailers, and I'm like, I don't love how dark it is. I don't love that it's very sort of like post Dark Knight Nolan-y. And then the reviews came out, and it was bad. And then I saw it, and then weekend of its release, I'm like, my parents are like, are you fine not seeing Superman this weekend? Because we had planned a trip to Newport, Rhode Island. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. To go to a point where I was like, I wasn't even excited for a Superman movie. And the next week's rolled around, I'm like, I'm going with an open mind. And then it proceeded to be, at that time, and for a long time, I will never say this is the worst movie I've ever seen, but it is probably my least favorite. Because it is a Superman movie that has basically nothing that I would want out of a Superman movie.
That is a fair thing.
And if you look at the three main creatives, Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan, and David S. Goyer, all of them have said, yeah, I'm not really into Superman. We kind of want to make a movie for people who are like, what is our version of Superman? And I do think there's validity to that, because he is a divisive character. He is a character that a lot of people write off. So, you can make a Superman movie for people who don't like Superman.
Yeah,
but
I
as
mean,
someone
it's
who
creative
likes
interpretation, it's
it's they have a take, but as someone who likes Superman, I say no thank you.
yeah.
And on top of it, you know, just having a take that I don't particularly vibe with, I also think it's incompetently written and made.
Fair. Yeah.
We can elaborate on that more later, but that's my take.
That's your take on it.
Yeah. There's 5 characters in the world that have 99% global recommendability. It is Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Santa Claus, Jesus.
Wow.
99% global recommendability.
Jeez. Superman, just knowing from pop culture, from all of that. And I had always just kind of seen it, but I never really engaged with it. When I watched Man of Steel, it accidentally became my definitive version. Because, I don't know, I kind of just took it as it was as a kid. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years ago, I saw the first 2, the Donner Superman movies.
The Donner and the... Did you watch the theatrical cut or did you watch Donner cut of Superman 2?
Donner cut.
Okay.
I watched Superman, the movie, and Superman 2, the originals with Christopher Reeve. And that was 2 years ago. So the Man of Steel from 2013 sat in my head for 8 years. And I watched those, and I'm like, oh, here's a movie that actually does it right. Like, oh, no. Because it had such wit to it. And it was just this kind of... It wasn't afraid to engage in sort of the campy, fun excitement that Superman can inhabit. Yeah. He can have this dark side and this serious side. But here... it's kind of fun to see this light side. I mean, the shot of him getting out of his Superman outfit to meet Lois at the door is amazing in that first one. So I've just tried my best to, I've been in Superman rehab for a couple years trying to get myself to enjoy the character again.
I mean, he's a children's character. And what those Donner movies get right is that, there are movies that are designed for children and to entice the child in all of us.
Yeah.
And obviously you can reinvent these things, but at the same time you're taking away a certain power to Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to an adult, it was like this guy can punch harder than anyone and go faster than anyone.
Yeah.
That's only going to get you so far.
Mm-hmm.
You need moments where he catches Lois Lane and he says, "Don't worry, Lois, I got you." And she says, "You got me. Who's got you?"
God, yeah, you do need that. And boy, shouldn't Amy Adams be a slam dunk for Lois Lane? You said this when we were watching it.
Yeah, but
you guys watched it together too?
Yeah, we watched it on the big TV.
Well, here's the thing. I wanted him to feel as good as possible watching this movie.
I don't know if I'd be able to finish it without Dan. That's entirely
no. I'm
possible.
saying with the 80 inches, the 80-inch flat screen.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to give him that at least.
And I got all 80 inches of Zack Snyder right in my eyeballs.
See, Erica and I'm currently unemployed, and I made a dumb decision to buy a sound bar while unemployed. But the first day we watched the sound bar, it was on sale. It was very much a heavily discounted sound bar. But it's still good quality for that price. But anyway, first thing we watched, Man of Steel.
And it's a loud movie. We had to crank it during the climax. We literally just had to turn down the volume and put
Steve,
on subtitles.
I usually also have to crank it during the climax.
Yeah. It's a loud movie. By the way, heavily discounted sound bars. My car seat had rest cover band. That's a joke. That's a joke pretty much just for Dan and maybe Owen Curtin.
Yeah.
But
anyways,
yeah.
To talk about a certain point that we have recently brought up, the sound of Man of Steel, particularly the soundtrack and the score.
Oh yeah.
What we have in there, Connor. What do you think of this? Because for me, this is actually one of my favorite themes to a film in this decade. Top 3, amazing. And this movie doesn't really deserve it. But does this kind of resonate with you? Does it improve the experience?
Are you asking me because I'm the least musically inclined of the three of us? As though I am the first.
No, because I want to include you in the conversation.
Well, it's not a diss, but I am the least musically inclined by far. Despite being in choir for 8 years, I have no sense of rhythm whatsoever. I faked sight reading all 8 years of choir. I still can't read music.
Nice.
And that might be why I have the answer I have. I think this score is perfectly okay. It does not move the needle for me whatsoever. In terms of my guy Hans, it's towards the bottom for me.
Interesting.
Well, Hans and Company. That's the
Hans
problem
and
with Hans
Company.
is we
Here's
don't know how much is actually Hans.
Yeah.
When they get Junkie XL on board, that's when I'm hyped.
Fair. Yeah, because this is when we watched, it was the third time I'd ever seen it, and I was scraping to find things I truly enjoyed, and it would be like a minute or two. I'd be like, "This is really cool. I really like where this is going. I kind of like this moment," and then it would end.
Yeah.
And I would get many scenes that I just.
Should I start? Because I actually like this movie. Like, I don't like this movie. I like more of it than you guys do, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean,
Go for it. Oh,
'Cause
how does it hold up for
my
you?
input, I also really like the score. Primarily the main theme. I think the rest of the score is just pretty passable, but I love
the main theme. Is
the main theme
what does it
is
for me.
incredible.
Yeah.
Continue, Connor.
But for my background on Superman 2, which is kind of similar to Steve's, so we have like this weird like branching off point where I was never as into Superman as Steve was or is currently. Batman was my introduction to superheroes as a whole.
Yeah.
And I, like Steve, grew up with the DCEU, which is the animated shows by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini.
Yeah.
And I'm actually watching
and Company.
and a whole
There's
bunch of
lot
other people.
There's
yeah.
a whole bunch of other
Yeah.
people, but they were the two primary.
Yeah, those are the two
creators.
like creative forces. At least for the one I was mostly into as a kid was the Batman the Animated Series and then the Justice Leagues.
No.
So my Superman was always that version of animated Superman.
Tim
and then-
Daly Superman.
Tim Daly Superman, yeah. And then by the time Man of Steel came out, like you just mentioned, the Dark Knight trilogy had just ended. And for a kid who grew up loving Batman and Superman always kind of being a second fiddle character, at least to my mind, in these shows, I didn't really care much about Superman. And like you said, I was 14 years old, and like most 14-year-old kids, you're a shithead. And I loved that Batman punched people real hard, and he mean, and he cool, and he rich, and have a lot of cars, and I liked him. I didn't like Superman. So when I heard the rhetoric of like it's Superman, people who don't like Superman, I was kind of excited. And then I liked Man of Steel when I saw it, but like I just said in the beginning of this recording, once we got to the end, I lose all interest. When it becomes a CGI slugfest with Zod, I'm gone. And to the point when I watched this most recent time, I actively zoned out during the final fight with Zod.
During the final fight with Zod, I turned to Dan. I was like, "All right, should I just buy Flash tickets now?"
Yeah.
I was like, what show times work best for us for tomorrow? I'm not even joking.
Yeah, it was.
At a certain point, it's just noise.
It is.
It's exhausting. The movie is exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Man of Steel. Yeah, I found myself really zoning out at the end, which is never what you want happening with a movie. But there are still things that I found in it that I appreciated. Aspects of the film that still hold up today, particularly the cast. I mean, that is kind of just, you have this sort of all-star cast.
Well,
that I
Snyder
really
has always
appreciate.
had great taste in actors.
Yes,
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
But he often gives them material that is nothing.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, the cast of his Watchmen is like half the cast of Little Children.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
It is.
I know it is.
You can compare
connected those, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He saw Little Children in 2006 while he was developing Watchmen, and then in 2009.
Yeah.
There it is. But yeah, that along with a lot of the set pieces and props of Man of Steel still work for me. I remember you were talking about some pretty cool set design for the council room in Krypton, which I love.
Yeah, the council room is one of the few Kryptonian bits of design that I actually like.
And we barely get any of, which is too bad.
And yet still too much.
And yet still too much. Yeah, a lot of setup.
It's crazy how much the movie loses me from like minute one.
See, I was hoping you liked the Krypton stuff because I'm still pro Krypton.
The Krypton stuff sucks
I
ass.
feel bad.
I
Here's the
hate
thing.
Matrix Pandora so much.
We were together for this, and we got to the end of the Krypton stuff, which was literally like, what, 30
It's like the
minutes
first
in?
20 minutes.
It's
20
20
minutes.
It's
We're 20 minutes in, and we finish, and little Kal-El is zooming off to Earth, and all I can do is tell Steve, Star Trek did it better.
Yeah, literally.
And they did it in like a tenth of the time.
If the opening of this movie was just launching Clark, like that section of him and Laura talking to each other, and then we interspice all the other Krypton stuff. I am, for one, usually against just unnecessary flashbacking
Like throughout a film.
throughout a film. I think it'd be a little bit annoying, but just for the sake of pacing, and then give us more Kansas. There's not enough Kansas in this movie. If you do not have an inherent baggage of Superman mythology with you going into this movie, the Kents mean nothing to you.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
And they don't in this movie.
To Kevin Costner's first scene, there's like a scene in the kitchen, and then he's like, well, I guess I gotta show Clark the spaceship.
Yeah.
That's all he has. And then we have a tornado scene, and he's fucking dead.
But
Well,
He's just some guy.
He tells him not to punch those bullies.
Yes, he tells them not to punch the ball. There's also that.
the fun thing with him crunching the gate.
Yeah, crushing the gate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
There's little moments throughout the
literally,
movie.
it's
Yeah.
just tiny little moments where you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that was cool. That was
Yeah.
fun. That was a good idea. But it's wrapped up in a big sloppy enchilada of a film. I like a lot of the practical props that we see in the film. And the biggest one is the Wold machine. And the big bummer of that is one of my favorite parts of that movie is watching the Wold machine do its thing, because sometimes it's just like, oh no, big green rays coming towards us. No, this is like,
It's
it
a
feels forceful.
It's a reverse sky beam.
Yes, it's a reverse sky
It's a
beam.
ground beam, yeah.
It's a ground
And I
beam.
like how it's on either end of the, like, I like all that, but
Yeah.
what ended up happening is every movie after that basically uses that image or flashes back to it. You get you see it in BVS.
We get
You
it
see
again in Flash.
Is it in Justice League? It's got to be. I think it's in Justice League. For
I
a
mean,
time,
there's the
too.
memorial. There's that big memorial.
But like, I feel like the things I appreciated a little bit with the first movie go on to define and just get recycled in later films, which is what brings us into The Flash. You know,
Well, because can I just run going by the stuff I think is actually good / interesting about Man of Steel.
yeah.
Yeah, let's
Steve
go
will
for
tell
it.
me he doesn't like it, then we'll move on.
Okay, I like that. Okay, let's do that.
I might like some of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like the Krypton stuff. I think it's pretty cool. It's a good opening. 20 minutes, a little too long. I really like the Krypton imagery. I think it's really interesting and stylized in an interesting way. I get what you said, Matrix Pandora, but at least for me, I fucking like Matrix Pandora.
Which is very
I don't know,
reductive
man.
of me, but it's also not inaccurate.
It also seems, I know every part of the movie is gray, and like that, like, you know, that whatever the DCU does for even the Flash till, but that felt like the colorful part of the movie, oddly enough. And I liked that. I like there was
Fair.
some color to it. Okay, my only other thing I like Jonathan Kent.
Costner.
If you
I
give
like
Costner some folksy monologue, he'll crush
That's
it.
true. That's true. Yeah.
But Costner's Superman, that'd be interesting.
That'd be really
It'd be
cool.
interesting.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder, he gets a lot of stuff, especially with Superman as a character, for two big things. Superman is Jesus,
Yes.
and Superman is exceptionalist. Which
Yes. Because for one thing, I can understand, like, he's a godlike figure come down to earth. He's a savior. There's some very surfacey parallels. Superman was created by two Jews from Cleveland. It's the story of Moses. A young orphan from a dying race is sent down a river and is adopted by a couple. As the boy grows, he learns that he has magical abilities and grows fond of the new race of people that have adopted him, and will one day have to become the savior of both the people who have adopted him and his chosen people. Throughout Superman comics, we learn of he's the last son of Krypton, but we learn of more and more Kryptonians.
other
We learned of
survivors, yeah.
Supergirl. We learned about General Zod. We learned about the lost city of Kaladar, or whatever it's called, the glass bottle city. It's Moses. He's the story of Moses.
It is.
And it's just so frustrating that there's this consistent, and obviously everyone is allowed their own interpretations of things, and I'm not denying the parallels, but it's just the fact that it's become like this default Superman is Jesus, and it's not just Snyder. It's plenty of other writers and comic book creators as well.
And I like that take because there is a lot of, like I was telling you about this pathos, something that comes with being split between wanting to know your past and your roots and having this new culture that you've actually grown up in, these people that have accepted you and you've started to like and appreciate, and having that that gets sucked out of Man of Steel,
Which, by all accounts, is basically going to be the basis of James Gunn's Superman movie. And it's called Superman Legacy. It's called Superman Legacy, right?
yeah,
That's the working title.
okay.
it's about his relationship to his father, both sides.
No. which was also weirdly the pitch I gave Connor.
Yeah, it was,
sophomore year of college. Connor, do you have spare
I just
thoughts?
want to ask you guys about your opinion of Henry Cavill, not as Kal-El, but as Clark.
I was gonna bring him up. I like Henry Cavill, and obviously, visually, Henry Cavill is a perfect match. Henry, at the same time, Henry Cavill usually is from the roles I've seen him, he's best leaning into sort of his inherent sort of smug Gaston-esque qualities. Like he plays a prick really well. And I'm not saying Henry Cavill is a prick in real life. Anytime I see an interview, I'm like, this guy's very, very charming and seems very personable. But he plays the sort of braggart well. And it's not even that, because I think the weird little moments where he's like, General, I'm from Kansas, like he can kind of, he's personable, he's charming. I don't buy Henry Cavill as a guy from Kansas. He's too British. He is too inherently British. And at the end of the day, I think, like, Brandon Routh, it's been a couple years since I've seen Superman Returns, a movie I generally like, though it's flawed. I mean, Brandon Routh, he was sacked with, trying to be, like, literally carrying the torch of Christopher Reeve, because that movie is basically a Lego sequel. It's basically, this is the quote-unquote real Superman 3. Yeah. But Brandon Routh is from fucking Iowa. Like, it's just baked in
it's there. You can put on any scraggly beard and fisherman's jacket that you like, but it's not gonna take away Henry Cavill. He does have an aloofness. He has a natural.
He has a very solid American accent, but there's just something, he just does not have that ingrained quality. Yeah. And also, I don't think it helps that, like, I never get a particularly good read on Clark or how he's supposed to feel in any of these movies. And the other problem is that we see him in sort of like, we only ever really see him as like Clark Drifter or basically as like Kal-El. We don't really get a good read on day-to-day Clark.
We don't. Yeah.
Which again,
like, we get a take, for example, the scene when he first has that sort of X-ray vision freak out when he's a little kid.
Yeah, and that's him as a kid.
That's him as a kid. We never get developed. We even, like, when we get the scene of, like, I kind of like college rebel. Don't tell me what to do, Dad.
You're not my real dad.
You're not my real dad. And then that's right before the tornado scene.
Yeah.
We don't even get much of that, really.
No.
Like, we just get snapshots that don't connect.
And he somehow plays an 18-year-old. I think there's some weird, like, de-aging stuff.
It works for me.
But he plays 18 surprisingly well, considering he was literally like 35 when he made this movie.
No, it was it worked for me as well.
The issue I had with this movie, and when I'm bringing this up, is I feel like we get no real sense of Clark as a character whatsoever.
Yes.
Like back in the X-Men days, Steve, we would do this like thing where we'd say, give me like one word to describe this character. Yeah. I really can't for Clark.
Yeah.
There's not a silly adjective I can place on Clark, really.
Yeah. Which is a problem when the movie is called Man of Steel.
Yeah.
We know nothing about the man.
And this might be because I obviously, not a skewed perception, but I have my own perception of Superman as a character. When I think of Clark Kent, I think of someone that society doesn't really take seriously. The glasses work, at least to me, because there's all the shit with the Kryptonian glass from his spaceship or whatever. But for me, the glasses work. Because when you look at Clark Kent, despite him looking and sounding like Superman, there's no way this loser could be Superman.
No.
Which, for me, when I look at this Clark, and this has been my issue with Henry Cavill as the character for a long time, is I don't buy Henry Cavill as, one, a guy from Kansas, but two, as somebody wouldn't immediately take seriously.
He's just, it was the thing I kept talking about, was like the scene in the bar when he's like defending the guy's fucking with a lady. Yeah. And then Clarkson was like, you have to cut it off, which is like a very Clark thing. Like, there were little moments I'm like, okay, you're kind of tapping into, I mean, my favorite piece of dialogue in this movie, or exchange of dialogue, where Lois is like, what's with the S on your chest? And he's like, where I come from, it's a symbol of hope. And she says, well, here it's an S. That's like a very good little Superman moment. And later, that one scene, that whole scene, the interrogation scene, where he casually like stands up and breaks the chains.
Oh yeah.
That's like the one that was like,
guys, this isn't gonna work.
You've got the patter here. You've got the elements here. But the problem with Henry Cavill is if that guy's trying to fuck with him, and I'm like, I don't care how straight you are, you look Henry Cavill in the eyes, and your only reaction can be like, this guy's really handsome.
Yeah.
This guy's like insanely handsome.
I watched this with Erica, and
Yeah.
she was heavily thirsting over Henry the entire time. But
It's hard not to.
It's hard not to. But my thing is that
You could
scene,
be
'cause-
Mike Pence, and
Yes,
Mike
yeah.
Pence would be like,
No, that scene though, which is why I'm about the scene in the bar. Like when that guy is messing with Henry Cavill,
yeah.
let alone like I just
Henry
don't.
Cavill's towering over him.
Yeah,
and-
I think the second Henry Cavill rolled up on that guy, he'd immediately back off.
Yeah.
There's no way. Like I watched this scene, I'm instantly taken out because like you're telling me you're gonna how? It makes no sense to me.
Can I just go on my quick David S. Goyer tirade?
Yes.
Okay, very, very quick. First off, Dan, well, I think the script of this movie is terrible. That is the fundamental main issue. My problems with Zack Snyder as a stylist, my problem, with the visual look of the movie outside, this script is fucking rancid. I've been re-listening to a bunch of interviews with David S. Goyer because I've been fascinated and frustrated by him for well over a decade now. I don't understand how he is as successful as he is, and then every time I watch an interview, it's so fascinating. This guy, I can see how he continues to get work. In a room, he reads, he's confident, he has very out of the box ideas, he's very articulate about his opinions and why he thinks something works and why he wants to take a story in a certain direction. This, then, the other thing.
Yeah.
If you listen to David S. Goyer speak, on the surface, he has a lot of features and qualities that you would surmise from an intelligent person and a competent writer. But he's neither of those things. He's a fucking idiot and a hack.
Steve, be nice. Be nice.
Film Master's does not support or condone the thoughts and
Yeah,
opinions
we don't
of its
condone
members.
calling people who are. Yeah, that's not nice.
Dang. You all entitled to
'cause-
this opinion,
Yeah.
and
You
I'm
are,
happy
Steve.
that
I
I'm happy that
gotta
you're
give you
sharing
credit because
this.
I, for one thing, I'm gonna say he reads a really smart person, and maybe he really is, but you would know he's a fucking idiot.
I think David S. Goyer is as strong as his collaborators. If you look at his best screenplays, Blade, Dark City, those are movies.
Dark City.
Yeah. Blade, but Dark City, he was the third writer hired. It's an Alex Proyas idea. Len Dobbs wrote the original draft, and David S. Goyer was like, okay, let me make this functional. He's got to understand how a script should work, and he tends to take other people's good ideas and sort of flesh them out into something. But if you leave him to his own devices, you get a mountain of horse shit. The movie is so... I'm all for a movie being stupid and silly, but it's so stupid and silly, and it takes itself so fucking seriously.
Because I was surprised by the number of jokes in this, actually. Considering their whole no jokes mandate in BBS.
Yeah.
All 5 of them.
Because they don't land, but they're saying 5 is more than the 0 joke mandate they said they had.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10 for superhero movie fun, I say this is pretty much a soupy deuce. For moments I'm
Maybe a
enjoying myself,
1.
or there's a lightheartedness where I'm like, oh, that was kind of cool. That was kind of fun. I give it a 2. We're going to take a quick break, just a pause, and we will go on to a discussion of 2023's The Flash.
Zoomy, zoomy, zoom. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Do you remember that? Do you remember the Mazda commercials?
No.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. And there was a little boy that just whispered, zoom, zoom.
Ew.
It's
I don't
freaky.
like that.
It's fucking freaky.
That is freaky.
Let me ask
Little
Connor if he
boys.
remembers those.
Yeah. Saying zoom zoom, whispery, ugh.
Connor, do you remember the Mazda commercials?
In general?
The Mazda commercials where they had a slogan that was zoom, zoom, zoom. It was this Tibetan monk voice, zoom,
Yes,
zoom,
yeah.
zoom. And there would be the little boy and he would just whisper, zoom, zoom.
Yes, I'll never forget the Zoom Zoom boy.
I never knew this.
You ever did the Zoom Zoom?
No. I'm sure one of you will send it.
This
to
will
me
be a
later
natural
tonight.
transition.
Yes.
One of my favorite tweets ever is from the writer Daniel Kibblesmith, and he's my wife's review of Justice League was Batman and the Angry Boy. No, Batman and his angry friends featuring Zip Zip the Runaround Boy.
It's pretty
and for like 6 years since. How long has it been since 2017?
6 years. Man.
Yeah. Ezra Miller will always be Zip the runaround boy.
I love it. Well, welcome back to Film Asterisk. If I didn't say before, this is actually our season 7 finale, which is kind of exciting. Yeah, this is the final episode of the season.
Forgot about that.
And thank you so much, Connor and Steve, for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Dan.
It's been a very fun season with all of you and what we've been able to do together, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. We just got through talking about Man of Steel, a film that went on to define a decade of the DCEU.
We needed like 3 forks to get it out.
Exactly. So let's talk about Flash. The Flash is a character that my best friend from high school, Andrew, adores. And I am excited to talk to him about this movie, even though I'm a bit nervous that we might have not gotten the film we deserved from The Flash. But I've always kind of appreciated that, for me, he was kind of... Barry Allen was the comedic, Spider-Man-esque DC character we could go to for some neighborhood speedy fun.
He is shockingly Spider-Man-esque.
Yes.
I was texting Connor about this a couple days ago, and I'm like, he is, in weird ways, the Spider-Man of the DCU.
Yeah.
Or DC Comics in general.
Which kind of begins my first major point and my first major complaint that The Flash is one of the first films to truly and honestly capture the multiverse idea of seeing different timelines and different iterations of this storybook universe, this comic book universe in the DCEU. And I can't help but feel like, in many ways, DC has been accused of playing catch-up with the MCU. It's always a little bit behind.
Yeah.
Or just trying to appeal to what they see as successful, you know?
And to add on to that, yes, nerds in the YouTube comics, I know that Barry Allen predates Peter Parker.
Yes.
I'm just saying there's parallels. But yes, that's the problem. I mean, DC set the mold in the comics in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Marvel broke that mold in the 60s. Yep. And then now with these movies, Marvel, especially in the past 20 years, has been absolutely lapping DC with the exception of the Dark Knight trilogy, culturally and economically.
Yeah. So, Connor, me and Steve have had some time to talk about The Flash, but I am very interested in your reaction, your thoughts, and most importantly, how would you kind of connect this to Man of Steel? How does it compare? Do you like it more or less? And how do you feel about the film's kind of intertwining nature with Man of Steel?
Well, I saw this with Erica, who, for people who don't know, is my girlfriend, who actually liked it the most out of the 4 of us. She actually really enjoyed the movie. Where I apologized to her for taking her to the theater when the movie was finished. And then she told me I liked it, so I was very surprised by that. It was an Amsterdam situation. The movie I dragged her to and that I ended up not liking it. She loved a lot. So I guess my general feelings about the movie. I don't like the movie very much. I don't think it is successful in a large variety of ways, going through every aspect of the motion picture. I did have fun. I did laugh. There were some good bits. I like the dog falling out the window. That sounds really weird to say it out of context, but I like that end credit scene where the dog is falling out the hospital window in slow motion. Mm-hmm. I think the movie does have fun ones. I like that he puts a baby in a microwave.
See, I'm sorry to interrupt. I found the baby stuff just so upsetting. That entire sequence to be so upsetting with the amount of like babies falling and it deeply unnerved me. Ezra
Miller is a very talented actor. They have proven themselves to be a very talented actor in a lot of different projects. And I like Barry in Zack Snyder's Justice League for the most part in his performance as Barry. But I think Ezra Miller in the movie The Flash, both Ezras, is a black hole of charisma. I think Ezra's performance does not work in either way, either one of them.
I guess we're going pretty heavy spoilers on this, right?
Yeah, we're going to go full spoiler. No, we're talking about this without going spoilers, I feel like.
Dead Mom Barry works for me.
So current day Barry.
Current Barry. As we kind of know, Barry Prime. works for me in the moments that the film is allowed to be a human drama rather than a superhero dramedy thing, action comedy sort of a thing. And the moments that Ezra is given to interact with just like Barry's family and coworkers and people around town, I kind of like how the Flash is sort of stuck in this place of kind of limbo with everyone he's around, and Ezra brings a lot of nuance to that. And there's especially a lot of scenes. This is why the film conflicts in my brain so much, because the Can of Tomatoes is one of the... I teared up every time that came up. It really caught me emotionally because I was able to take that scene for itself. But it's surrounded again by a lot of stuff I just found myself not caring about, mostly when the humor is injected. I mean, humor is really hard to do. Probably harder to do than drama. A lot of people say that. Here... that it proves that theory, I think, a bit.
Well, my thoughts? Yeah. More like Flush. No, I'm kidding. I have a lot of conflicting thoughts in this movie, like the rest of us. I think the first 2 hours of this movie are entirely functional.
They're fine.
And it's almost a backhanded compliment that I mean sort of sincerely as a compliment. When I was watching the movie, I'm like, it is sort of based on its troubled production and release, even outside of the Ezra Miller. I mean, the amount of directors that were hired and fired and screenwriters. Remember at one point Ezra Miller was writing it themselves.
Yeah.
And I believe
he was co-writing with somebody. It wasn't Jeff Johns, but it was someone.
It was someone, and I believe Ezra Miller still has a story credit.
No way.
Along with John Francis Daley and his partner, whose name I'm forgetting. Writers and directors of Vacation, Game Night, and Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. They were attached to this movie for a long while. They were the last ones before Muschietti. And
he co-wrote it with Grant Morrison.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Which I don't think a lot of that remains outside of certain story beats. And I also, I read for this. I reread Flashpoint after seeing the movie. And I was kind of surprised just how many, even though there was a lot of things that are different about this from Flashpoint, just how many specific, like very specific beats were taken from Flashpoint. And I credit a lot of the functionality of this movie to Christina Hodgson, who I think took a lot of different elements from drafts and sort of mushed it all together and connected it, because she's a smart, talented screenwriter who I think has a very good track record with, these big blockbuster type movies. Even if all of these movies are not entirely successful for me, I can generally see, and I'm like, I can see, the gears turning here, and I think she's very smart about story structure and character beats and tying in the pathos that Dan was talking about, even if at times feels a little clunky and functional. And then so I was watching and I'm like, it is kind of knowing everything we know about the lead up to this movie, how long it's taken, even outside of the context of the pandemic. I mean, we first saw footage of this 2 years ago,
2 DC fandoms ago.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's kind of a miracle that this movie works at all. And is that a waste of a perfectly good miracle? Just to end up with a pretty mediocre movie that has some good moments and some good elements, but doesn't really jive together as a whole, or doesn't even really sing. And then the last 20 minutes just so thoroughly lost me with how ghoulish and distasteful I think they are.
They kind of just tank the third act.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to go big.
They make a really big swing.
It doesn't need to be a risk, but they do. They go just a big old swing with it, and it's like...
Well, I'm all for these types of movies making really big, risky decisions, but it's not really a big, risky story decision. It's a big, risky decision for the sake of Easter eggs and for the sake of brand management. And
for literally soulless cameos.
Yeah, because you're incorporating dead people who didn't ask to be in your mediocre movie.
Yeah.
just very truly distasteful, even beyond the fact of incorporating these dead icons at all, but also just like a lot of the CGI in this movie, it looks horrible.
Most of it, yes.
Supposedly was a stylistic choice.
Which,
according to Muschietti, it was a stylistic
which is
choice.
horseshit. I like conceptually sort of the
Chronodome.
The Chronodome, their fake
Having the frames go back.
Yeah, and it being like this weird. Have you ever seen those giant zoetropes where it's a strobe light and the statues? I'd like conceptually that it looks like that,
but I don't like it in execution.
But it looks like shit because they probably just fucking ran out of money. This is. I mean, just in terms of the amount of how long this movie has been delayed and reworked, this has to be one of the most expensive movies ever made. We're talking like near Avatar levels, just because they've just had to reconfigure it so many different times.
Yeah,
and like I said, that's not on the VFX houses who are overworked and underpaid. It is on the insane demands put on them and the constant changes they're told too late.
Earlier in the movie, they drop a line where Barry Prime says that Affleck Bruce Wayne is his best friend, which is a detail so specific and so sad that it just sort of lodged in my brain. Yeah. And now we've reached this ending where Barry has two choices. He can live in a world in which his father is imprisoned, and he has a friend who's this guy who's twice his age and he just works with and talks to sometimes outside of work. Or he can live in a world where his father is free, but now his best friend doesn't exist in the form in which he knows him. And that's not played for tragedy. It's played as a bit in a cameo.
Yeah.
And then his tooth falls out at the end. It's just like indignity on top of indignity that is only played for a joke, not for the tragic irony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which at a point can be comforting in a sense. For me, when I watch a resolution coming out of a film, it's like, oh, he doesn't get his world back.
No.
Barry is just stuck with living with this mistake, and he has to learn to move on. And just kind of see like, oh no.
The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, like he ends up in a world where everything's the same except people have lizard tongues.
Yeah.
Homer goes close enough.
Yeah, literally.
But he doesn't get the world where it's raining donuts.
Exactly.
Dead sister-in-laws, mid-size sedan.
But yeah, so
here's the, I hate to leave my thoughts maybe so negative. I feel bad dunking on the Flash. So I've dunked on the Flash. Like I said, there is stuff that does work, and I guess I'll just go through that promptly.
Yeah.
I like Keaton, even though I think a lot of the Keaton scenes don't really amount to anything. And Keaton as a character, like Batman as a character, so he doesn't really amount to anything. Same with Supergirl. I like them a lot, but I feel like the movie underserves every single character, and they're not really, an exception to that.
They're plot functionaries, even if you have talented actors giving good moments and good performances.
And I guess I leave the movie. This might close off on those two characters. Is I leave the movie mourning Batgirl, because I would love for a variety of reasons, but obviously Keaton was also in that picture. On top of us losing the work of Leslie Grace and now Academy Award winner Brendan Fraser as Firefly, which we're just never going to see. That's in a drawer. That's never going to see the light of day ever.
And hundreds of craftspeople and
hundreds
other
of craftspeople.
And,
the two directors. So I'm not going to attempt to say their names because I'm going to terribly butcher them.
The Bad Boys
and
boys.
The Bad Boys Live directors, yeah. And also, Sasha Calley. I don't know what her Supergirl was going to end up doing in this franchise from now on. But she's really strong in this. I really do love her in this movie. And it's a bummer that she's going to stop here.
And she's barely in it, and she's barely instantly endearing. She's quite strong in this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mourn the loss of, because I'm not against the James Gunn DCU. I'm at this rate I'm for it, and I think the DC franchise needs it, at least on a cinematic level, because as evidenced by the box office for this and Shazam, and to a lesser extent Black Adam, like people just don't care anymore. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a necessary change and one that I do welcome, but it is a bummer that these performances I think are very interesting, especially with Sasha Calley, is just not going to see the light of day. And here's the thing, maybe she'll be the Supergirl in James Gunn's new DC. He loves this movie. He loves her. Maybe. It's possible.
Yeah, but
And
Fair.
then, yeah, final things. The day before I saw this movie, at least I think it was the day before, Andy Muschietti was announced to direct Batman: The Brave and the Bold. I sent that text to you, Steve, and our friend Clay with great joy and excitement. And post The Flash, the first thing I said to Erica is, "Oh fuck, he's directing Batman: The Brave and the Bold."
But I don't know if we can even entirely blame.
It's not
I think
his
the whole
fault.
project is just fucked. I think no one's coming
I
out
know,
clean.
But I was excited before I saw the movie because I think he has really good handle, at least I thought more so than I do now. He has really great handle on Batman imagery. And seeing a trailer with all the imagery back to back to back is much more effective and engrossing than actually seeing it in the movie.
Yeah.
I'm more not necessarily with Muschietti because I don't dislike how he handles Keaton's Batman in this whatsoever. But I guess I'm more scared that he's directing the new Batman. It's a double whammy of James Gunn loves this movie, and it's also directed by Andy Muschietti.
But also, James Gunn could just be saying that he loves this movie for the sake of brand
I don't know,
management.
but yes, it's same for branding. But he said that before he was the head. I think he legitimately means it. I don't think he's bullshitting on that. I think he legitimately means he loves this movie.
I think you can
And so
take
does Tom Cruise. People
anything
legitimately love
with
this
a
movie.
little grain of salt, just the tiniest grain of salt of them being nice for the sake of box office, for the sake of good business.
Yeah, but
My final
Final-
thoughts. Dan, I'm going to give you a thought that I think you went into this wanting for us to sort of cover the spectrum of the DCEU, our thoughts on the DCEU through the lens of these two movies. And I think Connor brings up a good point. In terms of this going forward, this now James Gunn, Peter Safran era of a new DCEU, I don't make this an interconnected franchise. Just make good movies. All this chess move nonsense. You're cutting yourself at the knees already. Just make good movies. And
what's
I
the
think
fact
James
now
Gunn
that they're connecting video games too.
and cartoons and
And
it's,
TV
it's
and
too much.
everything,
It's
yeah.
too much. And I think James Gunn, I think he's a filmmaker I like a lot. I think he views comic books in a very similar way that I do.
Yeah.
I, for the most part, really have really liked his various comic book films to different extents. I think he is a guy who artistically, at least for me as an audience member, has very similar sensibilities to the tone and these worlds that I do, the way that I grew up in these books. But stop trying to make these fucking interconnected movies. Make good, I am not a fan of the Matt Reeves Batman, but do more stuff like that. Yeah. Just make a Batman movie. Come up with your own worlds. Introduce all the characters you want, and stop worrying about these larger universes. You're cut off at the knees. Okay, actual final thought on The Flash. And then, Dan, I'm done, I promise. I do find it very funny that the crux of this movie is, wouldn't it be fucking annoying to hang out with Ezra Miller? That's the pitch.
Yeah, kind of is.
That even Ezra Miller can't stand being near Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, my final thoughts, I'm a decade through experiencing the DCEU.
And a decade through this episode.
Yep. And it has remained consistently inconsistent, and I can't help but feel like it will continue to be a grab bag that you cannot predict. And I'm not sure if that's the lesser of other evils, whether it's the homogeneity of MCU movies, whether it's just one-off films I don't like, or whether it's just going to be DCEU. Just you're going to see what happens with this one. Who knows?
At this
We only got
point,
2 more left.
Yeah.
as much as I consistently don't like a majority of these movies, I still think I would take the DCEU over the MCU.
1,000
Same.
times over.
Same. These days,
I
absolutely.
and that's a backhanded compliment.
It is.
The Wakanda Forever
involved.
fucking rocks.
Wakanda Forever fucking rips. Yeah, that and Guardians 3 fucking rock. I will fully defend those both movies.
So, yeah. Thank you for
Thanks,
joining
Dan.
me on this
Thanks for having us, Dad.
season finale, talking about the Man of Steel and the Flash.
Always happy to be with my favorite cuties.
Oh, as always, if you want to know all thoughts on other movies, I will plug all collective letterboxes. DA_N, Cranberry18, and Steve Lakebird.
Steve Lakebird. You can read my Flash review where I share an anecdote about Sir Daniel Wagner.
Did you read that, Connor?
I did. It's a good story. Me and Erica both laughed.
That was, yeah.
Erica had to explain to me what song that was in the movie.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, they also play "If You Leave Me Now" at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess thank you for listening. Have a lovely evening, and you'll be hearing from us very soon.
Zoom.
So